Bedtime buddies, thanks for tuning in and sharing your time with us. My name is Nikki Moon, and this is
Book KB.
Book KB.
That's KB though.
KB though. And this is Bedtime Stories with KB and Nikki Moon.
KW.
Tonight we are going to be continuing the story
from last night.
From last night, yes ma'am.
Because we didn't got time, because it's a long story, and I have bedtime since I have school tomorrow.
Yeah, it has a couple different stories in this big book. Yeah. This is the larger-than-life book, The Adventures of American Legendary Heroes by Robert Sansuki or Susie.
And
you want to find the next story?
Yeah, this is it.
All right, while KB finds the next story, did you guys know it was National Cheese Doodle Day?
I love cheese. Yes.
You love cheese doodles?
Where's the back? I'm going to show you.
So cheese doodles are these thingies right here. Well, these are the Cheetos kind. But Nikki Moon and KB can grub down to some Cheetos, right? Some cheese doodles. Wait. That's just a little fun fact for you guys. Okay. So tonight's story is Old Stormalong, the Deepwater Sailor.
I'm licking the cheese off.
Alfred Bulltop Stormalong, or Stormy, as he was nicknamed, was the greatest Yankee deepwater sailorman to put out from Cape Cod in the days of wooden ships and iron men. He was born in a little village on the Maine coast, and when fully grown, he stood 24 feet tall. Stormalong always loved the sea. As a child, he'd play along the seashore and sometimes swim 100 miles or more from Maine to Cape Cod just to roughhouse with the boys there. He first shipped out as a cabin boy on the Lady of the Sea when he was 13 and just over 6 feet tall. Because his daddy, himself a Yankee captain, had taught him, he already knew his way around a ship, from bow to stern and from keel to crow's nest. He could climb the rigging or tie sailor knots with the best old salt. Shortly after he was promoted to boatswain, the ship anchored at sea to ride out a storm. But when the winds died down and the crew tried to raise anchor, they couldn't lift it. The anchor would give a bit, then sink right back as though huge hands had pulled it under. When Stormy added his strength, they were able to haul it close enough to the surface to see that a giant octopus had wrapped half its arms around the anchor, while half were holding on to the seaweed and rocks on the bottom. "Blow me down," cried the captain. "What'll we do?" By way of an answer, Stormalong jumped overboard and disappeared under the waves. A minute later, the water began to churn, while the Lady of the Sea, still tied to the anchor, dipped and bobbed like a float on a fishing line that's hooked a big one. Captain and crew were tossed from side to side, the whole ship creaked and groaned, and all the pots in the kitchen tumbled down on the cook. Then the water was still. The sailors looked over the rail, shook their heads sadly, and took off their caps out of respect for the boatswain, who had been everybody's friend. Suddenly there was a cry of "Ahoy!" as Stormalong's head appeared. While his mates cheered, he climbed hand over hand up the anchor chain. "Raise anchor!" he cried.
Raise anchor!
As soon as he planted his feet on the deck. This time the huge mud hook came up without a hitch. "What about the octopus?" asked the skipper. "I tied each of his 8 tentacles in a different sailor's knot," laughed Stormalong. He counted off on his fingers. Reef knot, half hitch, bowline, sheep shank, stunner hitch, cat's paw, Beckett bend, and fisherman's bend. "It'll take him a month of Sundays to untie himself." Not long after this, the Revolutionary War began. When Stormalong heard that John Paul Jones was enlisting sailors for the 1st American Navy, he went to look at the commander's ship, the Bonhomme Richard. He decided it's big enough so it won't cramp my style, and signed on as a sailor. Stormy had his night of glory in 1779 when the Bonhomme Richard, I don't know if that's Bonhomme Richard or Bonhomme, but I think it's Home.
Where is it?
Homme. Bonhomme Richard. If you guys know,
Homie.
It's Homie. KB says it's Homie. If
Yeah.
you guys know how to properly pronounce Homme,
I'm
please
gonna show
comment
you.
down below so we know, so that
I'm
we
gonna
can
show you where it is.
so we can say it correctly next
Where
time.
is it?
It's okay. I spelled it out for him. So Stormy had his night of glory in 1779 when the Bon Homme Richard joined battle with the Serapis, the head ship in the King's Navy. The ships closed, firing cannonballs at each other. "Looks like we're in for a little trouble," yelled Stormalong, who was at the wheel. When 3 of the American cannons were blown to bits, then a big hole was opened in their side. Looking over the railing, Stormy reported, "Might be we're sinking too." Oh no. So let me show you guys the octopus.
It's funny looking.
Oops.
Why octopuses are green?
That one's just green. They're not all
Then
green.
why there's scribbles for the blue sky?
It's just the way it was drawn on there, honey.
Because blue sky don't have scribbles.
Okay. "Are you ready to surrender?" the British captain called across to the Americans. "Sir, I have not yet begun to fight," John Paul Jones shouted back. Heck, we're sort of just getting the hang of it," yelled Stormy, throwing a cannonball with his bare hands that sent the British captain running for cover. "What do you suggest?" John Paul Jones asked Stormalong above the sounds of battle. "I say we board them," said Stormy. "I'd feel better about fighting with the deck under me instead of water." "Good man, steer away," ordered John Paul Jones. So Stormalong brought around the Bon Homme Richard, which was tilting badly, and aimed for the Serapis. Cannonballs from the other ship ripped through the sails before the ships collided with a splintering sound. "Well done, man," cried John Paul Jones. "Now throw out the grappling hooks and let's board her." Faster than the eye could follow, Stormy flung 24 hooks over the railings of the Serapis, pulling the ships together. Then he and John Paul Jones and the rest of the crew, hanging from sails and ropes, swung across onto the enemy deck. There Stormy brought a cannon to his shoulder and fired it the way a man might fire a rifle. When the fighting was over and the captain of the Serapis surrendered, the Americans took possession of the ship. They had to leave the valiant Bon Homme Richard to sink. After the war, John Paul Jones asked Stormy to stay on and serve with him. But Stormalong said, "I'm going to keep watch by the Boston docks until I find a ship that'll give me a little more room."
Can you see it? If I call out your name, then you're gonna, then in my classroom, I'm gonna tell you what the names are in my friends. One of them are named Talon, Camden, Egypt, Basuna, Layla, Denny, Lexington, and that's all. And Miss T.
Okay.
That's
She's
Miss
giving
T.
a shout out to her buddies in class and her teacher.
Which I did. And one more I'm going to shout out. I think I said Layla. But I'm going to do it later.
Oh, that was sweet, baby.
And one more. And Miss T's dollars, Zoe G.
Mm-hmm. He found his dream ship soon after, the Albatross, a giant clipper too large to enter Boston Harbor, dropping anchor outside. Her cargo from India, China, or Russia had to be put onto smaller ships that carried the goods to shore. "Now this is a ship for a grown man," Stormalong said happily, and he quickly signed on as a crewman. The Albatross was so big, the captain kept a stable of horses on deck. Could you imagine a ship with horses on it? That's a big ship. So that the men on watch could ride fore to aft. The Albatross was so big, the captain kept a stable of horses on deck so that the men on watch could ride fore to aft. Her masts were so tall that the top parts were on hinges so they would not hit the moon or sun. Men who climbed up to the crow's nest to serve as lookout went up as smooth-faced young men and came down with long gray beards. It took 34 men to turn the wheel. Only Stormalong could handle it by himself. Usually the Albatross was not bothered by bad weather, but one storm was so fierce the ship was driven every which way. The howling winds and waves would have surely sunk any smaller ship. Through it all, Stormalong kept the wheel, holding the ship to what he thought was the right direction. When the sun returned and they could see where they were, they discovered they were in the North Sea, headed for the English Channel. Since the North Sea was not big enough for the Albatross to turn around in, they were in danger of getting stuck between the black cliffs at Dover and the French coast. "Will she make it through?" the captain asked Stormalong. "I think so," said Stormalong, "but you'd better send all hands over to soap the sides." The captain shouted orders to the sailors, who climbed over the railings and, hanging from ropes, soaped as they were told. "Put more on the English side," called Stormy. "Step lively now, or there's going to be trouble." The crew kept adding more soap until there wasn't room enough for a man to squeeze in between the side of the Albatross and the British coast. Then the ship just barely squeaked through. But the squeeze was so tight, the ship's sides rubbed up against the land on the English side. The soap scraped off, and that is how the cliffs at Dover became white. That's interesting.
It's very interesting.
In time, Stormalong became captain of the Albatross. He'd sit on the deck having a dozen ostrich eggs, each served on a loaf of bread, for breakfast. For supper, he liked a good fish soup served in a Cape Cod boat, and hot shark steaks rushed up from the kitchen by 10 sailors pushing wheelbarrows. He would wash this down with a barrel of whale milk mixed with Maine apple cider, sucked up through a fire hose he used as a straw. When he was finished, he'd stroll the decks, picking his teeth with a marline spike. Then he would sigh happily and say to the first mate, "It sure feels good not being cramped for space. A sailor needs a ship that fits him. When he's got that, he's got everything he needs." Over the years, his travels took him to Italy, where he once leaned against the Tower of Pisa, which had been tilted ever since. In Australia, when he bought himself some new clothes and threw away the old, the fleas that escaped became known as kangaroos.
What's kangaroo?
Kangaroos? You know, little kangaroos. Like kangaroos jump.
And they have a pocket with
Yeah.
for posies?
No, kangaroos don't have pockets full of posies. They have a pouch that their baby joeys hang out in.
Pocket full of posies. At this, we all fall down.
You're so silly.
You did fall down,
Dang it,
so
show
you
you
lose.
guys this.
You did fall down, so you lose.
One day, old Stormy said to his first mate, "I feel it's time to move on again. Even the Albatross is feeling a bit small." "But there's no bigger ship anywhere," said the mate. "Not on any earthly sea," Stormy agreed. Soon after that, he died peacefully in his sleep. He was mourned by every American sailor. It took 10 acres of sailcloth to make his shroud. The Albatross, taking him for a burial at sea, was followed by a line of ghost ships, including the valiant Bon Homme Richard and many others that had been sunk in battle or wrecked by storms. Behind them, Father Neptune led a double line of seahorses ridden by weeping mermaids. Alfred Bulltop Stormalong was lowered into the sea on silver chains to rest forever in the ocean that was his first and lasting love. But he lives on in the stories about him that are shared by deep water sailors everywhere. See that? That's awesome. I love mermaids.
Yeah. I want to be one so I can live underwater so I can breathe underwater.
I know. I want to be a mermaid too.
Because when you get out of the water, you get to breathe.
Yeah.
Because you can live out water with mermaids
Mm-hmm.
and food.
Well, what did you guys like about this story the most? What
Wait.
did you like best?
Wait, we
What?
didn't read some.
Yeah, that was the end of that one. The end of that story.
Oh, this is the end.
What was your favorite part about it?
Let me see. We did read this.
No, we can't read that one tonight. We just finished the second one tonight. So all the way up here. What was your favorite part about it? The octopus?
No.
That was probably my favorite part, when he said that he tied all the octopus's tentacles together.
This, but we didn't read it.
Octopus tentacles together.
I like this. Like everything.
You like the mermaid the best.
Wait, I'm gonna think what you like the best. Close your eyes.
I already told him what I liked the best.
I didn't remember what you said. So
The octopus.
You can't tell me.
Because I thought it was funny that he tied the tentacles together.
Wait, who tied it? Where's the tentacles?
I don't think it showed it. It just showed the octopus.
Where is it?
Well, we want to know what your favorite part of the book was. So let us know in the comments down below. We hope you guys enjoyed this bedtime story. If we pronounced any of the ship names incorrectly, please let me know so I cannot mispronounce it later on in the future in life if I need to ever pronounce those words again or the ship names again.
Smash that like button if your name I just said it.
Alright guys, so if you like this story, please subscribe to our channel, like, share, hit the notification bell. KB, what was your favorite part of the story?
Nothing.
The mermaid?
I'm gonna think what you said so I don't remember. I think the octopus.
The octopus was my favorite part.
And I'm gonna think what you guys think. Both way. I think a couple of you picked the mermaid, and a couple of you picked the octopus.
Alright guys, we hope you have sweet dreams. Thank you again for tuning in. And don't
it's
forget,
time to get my wiggles out.
Don't forget to get all your wiggles out.
You ready?
You are so silly. And don't forget to read. We love reading to you guys, but make sure you guys also read. Reading is very, very good
Smash
for
that
you.
like button and see if you can read. I can press my legs and do
KB is silly.
like that. It hurts my leg. That's it.
Good night, guys.
It don't hurt my leg.
See you during the next story.
Smash the like and put that ring thingy on.